We can start with the social structure of accumulation model, which is also called in short form SSA. And SSA model, basically, according to the economists who use them, who use them, who use it, let me say, is built for each country separately. So for each country, basically, in a normal functioning economy, which is, according to this view, regulated and shaped by the accumulation process. I mean, the continuously increasing capital amount. Why this is necessary? Because in the end, economy is only healthy if there is growth, and growth brings more capital as people have more profit, and the profit will also be invested to for new, let's say, for new facilities, for new companies, or for new, to enlarge the existing companies. And as a result, the amount of capital should continue to increase in a healthy economy. And there is a social structure which also includes the role of state, but also, in a way, the way the nation functions that supports this economic process. But as economic system progresses, that system will become deficient as the economic system becomes more developed. And at that point, um, a new social structure should be founded, which will replace the old social structure. Um, one way of use it, one economist who used it was Bowles, who has created the USSSA after 1945. To which he has given four different components. One is the capital accord, capital labor accord. Basically, after 1945, the unions were allowed, and they were also allowed to have strikes and do collective bargaining. However, the way they can function was severely limited with the laws. In a way, certain activities, certain type of strikes they were doing before were not allowed anymore for them. And the capital labor problems were solved through the intervention of the state. Um, the second one was, again, I'm going briefly over them, Capital Citizen Accord. So basically, the citizens' life was actually the ordinary people's life as consumer have been increased to certain amount by providing them certain things freely, like college education for the people above a certain level of abilities, healthcare, um, social security. I mean, after a certain after they got old, the uh, certain amount of income. Unemployment insurance, you got, if you are unemployed, you got a certain amount of income again. Um, so citizens are, through different levels, I mean, guaranteed a certain minimum life level even when they are unemployed. Um, in return, they become more secure, and they are able to buy from the companies the products that were produced. So the basis of the consumer economy was built in the United States, which actually creates sufficient level of demand for the companies. The first one actually has decreased the cost between capital and regulates the capital labor problems, basically. Uh, So all these supports and all those permissions were basically given by the state and under the overall agreement of the nation also. Pax Americana is the relation between the United States and the rest of the world, basically. United States creates a peaceful atmosphere in the peaceful environment in the world, and through this peaceful environment, it was investing to other countries and building building industries there, and in return they were able to use the labor force of those countries and getting some from this cheap labor force some additional profits, as well as, I mean, Mexican workers at least were also able to go to the United States and work, and they were able to also provide cheap labor force. And under these conditions, intercapitalist competition, the competition was relatively low because the consumer demand was expanding. So basically, whenever they increase their production capacity, they didn't have to compete with each other that much because there are also new buyers who want to buy more. But in time, after in 1960s and especially 70s, this structure starts to be shattered because capital labor, even though state regulates them, capital labor problems become more costly. Similarly, the minimum standards that is met by the state starts also become more costly. According to some years, when the minorities which were relatively included or actually were given less were increasingly not anymore. They were also included in the in the programs which provide some minimum life standards. Some segments of the society that provides cheap labor force also wanted equal rights, by the way. And as a result, the companies especially is increasingly become unhappy with the existence of union and their power to mediate the wages, as well as these social programs which provides minimum life standards, and maybe they were also preventing low wages. The low wages the companies are willing to offer to them. I mean, the companies were willing to offer at least to some workers being accepted. Meanwhile, in the United States, there were some other countries which were challenging the United States, Japan, and Europe certainly, which were also investing in other countries, as well as developing countries started to develop some national industries, and trying to some extent rely on these industries. So in those developed world, United States also had competition, and as a result, intercapitalist competition becomes more costly. What happened after 1980s? A new form of USSSA has been created. Union's power has been increasingly decreased, and kind of a new flexible labor market was created. Certain segments of the society which were not organized were taken into the labor market, like the women and immigrants, especially after a certain point. Immigrants which did not have necessary documents to officially work in the United States, which were called sometimes undocumented, sometimes illegal immigrants. And that was Capital Labor Accord, Capital Citizen Accord. I mean, how the consumption was maintained. Financial system was developed, which actually allowed people to borrow money to maintain and, in some cases, increase their living standards. For example, for healthcare costs, for accommodation, buying a house, for getting a university, for everything, there are long-term loans, extreme long-term loans were offered by the companies. Pax Americana is actually, I mean, the countries, which especially developing countries, were increasingly, they actually, in order to support their industries, they got into debt, and as a result, I mean, they need to sign certain agreements which liberate the economies, and many of the national companies were sold, and a significant portion of those sold factories and facilities were bought by the United States, as well as the Soviet Union was dissolved, so a new area was created. Actually, even China has been opened toward U.S. investment in 1980s. So a new area, old communist bloc, was created, which basically allowed US companies to go and also invest. And as a result, capitalist competition becomes again less costly. So this is how, more or less, the organization of the US SSA's development. To sum up, basically, uh, certain a certain structure of cooperation rules and regulations, which actually on which the economic system is built is created by the nation and the state together. It is not only created by the state institutions, but also to some extent national agreements and national tendencies also. And up to a certain point, this structure is actually supporting the economic system. After a certain point, it no longer can do it, and it is dismantled basically. And a new SSA is created by the nation and the state. So there are alternative SSAs built for alternative countries. I'm sure if you look to the internet, you can find also for one for Turkey or any other country you want, basically. Well, another the World System Framework, to some extent we have gone through it basically, claims that the role of states are basically determined by their relative positions in the world economic system. Certain countries, when their population is more complex, they might need to have complex organizations like redistribution of income, welfare state, relatively more democratic governance, so that people will have a say on how the state is governed, and certain structures that will make economic system more productive, as well as to some extent control and deal with other nations and maintain their economic superiority, while in other countries where relatively the position of the host countries are weak, the states become less powerful and less, let's say, significant. Actually, more powerful state might prevent that country's integration to the world economic system. One example is given by Wallerstein. It was Africa. According to Wallerstein, actually, Africa, the continent, before the discovery of Christophe Colomb and Vasco da Gama, before the discovery of the roads throughout the oceans, the great age of discovery, the African continent did not have many states. As these discoveries happened, in critical locations where people were trading, states have formed, because Africa was at that time, according to Wallerstein, still outside of the European economic system. In order to communicate with European economic system and trade with it, some organizational structures were necessary. And once those organizational structures were formed, in terms of maybe certain towns will have transformed to the city and get control of other area and connect with other towns, which are other cities, which were also organizing trade with the European nations and the rest of Africa. As a result, a state and a proto-nation within the state was formed, a small nation-like community, let me say. Probably those are now the smallest countries of the Africa, because their size should not be that large if they are just organizing the trade. But once Africa was incorporated to the world economic system in 19th century, now those states become obstacles, because now basically the main power, the core countries, should be able to deal with or regulate the economic system directly of African countries directly. And I will tell what happened in the next part after that.